So when I was in school, when I was in college, we had just bio and chemistry as our tracks. And so now, because IT and cyber is getting bigger, they've updated all of the programs to be um, included as an option for those tracks. And so a lot of people don't know that digital forensics is actually a part of forensic science. So it has its inner workings. And so I did my talk last year because I feel like, you know, a lot of it overlaps. We have regulations that we have to follow. We have rules. We have organizations that we do our standards against. Just like NIST, everyone uses NIST in cybersecurity. Well, there's also NIST for the sciences. So they definitely overlap. And the overlap, the industries don't talk that much. So I want to make sure that, you know, they talk. You have to talk to the science and the technology industry. You can't have one without the other. The world revolves around science and technology a lot of the times. So my perspective is that let me merge what I've learned in the scientific industries, especially with documentation. A lot of the stuff and a lot of things are not documented well. So when you have those audits, a lot of people have, you know, audits that they have, and they get tripped up because a lot of their stuff is not documented. And so I'm really big on making sure that when you're doing your cyber stuff, that it is documented, so that with all those laws and those healthcare organizations, that you have to make sure everything that you're doing is documented somewhere, just in case something happens. You're covered yourself. You are being proactive instead of reactive. It's always good to have stuff in place beforehand, just so it's always a just in case. So I always make sure, and me doing all of that I'm doing, studying, you know, self-teaching all of my cybersecurity stuff, as well as still working in the sciences, that I'm very vigilant and continuously, you know, paying attention to what's going on. You will never stop learning. It will never be an instance where you stop learning something. Stuff is always growing, and it's growing rapidly. So I always just make sure that, you know, I'm on top of things, researching, and just being, you know, proactive and being a part of the community and learning about the industry as well.
Thanks for sharing that. Yeah, definitely. Being proactive and continuously learning is big, not only in cyber, but tech as well. Every day there's something new, there's something coming out. Cloud is so huge right now, and talking about security, that the security of Zoom and all, that's just big, and making sure that you're a continuous learner will help you overcome a lot of the challenges that we're facing. But thank you also for just sharing how you transitioned. I'm going to go to the audience. Joseph had a question. Joseph, I just allow you to talk. Do you want to go ahead and ask your question? Joseph Drummond.
It's just Drummond. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so I had a quick question. Right now, I'm thinking about pivoting my career. I've been in cybersecurity for about 5 years now. Before that, systems engineering. And I was looking at law school, and I know that there's a large amount of lawyers in the US currently. But I was thinking that potentially cyber law might be a more lucrative field than other types of law currently. A lot of my friends that have went to law school, they try to tell me if you don't specialize in something, it might not be worth it to do it. So especially from those that have legal experience, what are your thoughts on that?
I'm guessing that's me. That's really interesting. Yeah, it's important to think about any type of certificate or degree that you're going to seek out, that you think about what's the value you're going to get from it. And for a law degree, I'll first tell you, law is hard. Not that all degrees aren't hard, but the experience is a really challenging one to take on with your shifting careers. But that being said, you can do it. I mean, I went to law school 10 years later. A lot of people don't know I started out in community college, then I went to a 4-year, and I worked in a lot of different areas before I went back to law school. So you can do it anytime. So, you know, in order to value what you can do for that legal in cyber, I would say it definitely is a growing field. It's definitely a lot of opportunity and even lucrative in the sense that it's so new. Most areas of law are very traditional based on case law that's been for decades. And so it's really relying on people who've just been in practice for many years. Whereas cyber and data is so new and changing every day. We only have like a handful of new laws that have popped up in the last 2 years. We have the California law that was recent, GDPR just within the last 3 years or so. So there's so many new opportunities that you can advance very quickly. And especially if you're a person who is a self-learner and wants to be on top of the everyday changing things. What I would suggest is talking to someone like me or others that have decided to do the law path. But I'd also look at opportunities to get some basic knowledge without having to actually pursue the law degree to see if it's something you're interested in. So the International Association of Privacy Professionals, for example, is pretty much the leading group where they provide certain certifications. And so they have certifications based on the type of position or the type of laws. So there's a US certificate, and sometimes even have free resources, and sort of looking at that and seeing if that's something you'd be interested in as far as material, and then taking a look at, okay, this is something I'm interested in substantively, and then am I willing to take, those years, the 3 years or 4, to actually do the full law degree.
That is good. I wanted to add to what Antonia was saying. From a cyber perspective, as a manager who has worked with legal departments on very complex investigations, a lot of people think that cyber is just, oh, somebody hacked us, let's do what we can to remediate the investigation and go forward. There are a lot of times where things end in litigation, and we have to work very closely with the legal team.
Mm-hmm.
And it's important to have cyber attorneys because they go through the lengths to learn the foundation of cyber. There are a lot of attorneys who know nothing about cyber, and it makes the investigation longer. It makes a lot of, just information gathering in general on both sides a lot longer. We have to stop and we have to break every single thing down for lawyers who aren't technical. And now that they do have this growing niche of cyber attorneys, it makes it a lot simpler. They already know what they need to gather their case and to build a case. They already know what it's going to take. They already know what information they don't need. They know who they need to call. They already know what warrants they need to get and how long it's going to take. And getting warrants is a very sticky thing, especially when you're dealing with internal cyber investigations. So it's definitely something that's lucrative. And that relationship between the cyber team and the legal team is definitely important.
Thank you. We have a few other questions. First question, Wayne, from an anonymous attendee. How valuable is Darktrace AI and machine learning in technology and cyber?
Yeah, so I was thinking about that question, viable. Viability is really, to me, hard to determine, right? I mean, I think there are a host of new companies that are coming up with, AI and machine learning kind of, buzzword type capabilities that aren't really AI driven at all. They're really just heuristics based in a sense, but they don't really offer any cognitive, intuitive capabilities in terms of threat detection. So, when I look at the pervasiveness of these companies, I think that it's pretty high. I think companies like Darktrace and, the company that was formerly known as Cylance, that got acquired by RIM or BlackBerry, if you will. Those companies had a, fairly novel approach to threat detection by looking at heuristics-based, patterns as opposed to signature-based detection or knowledge-based detection, which I think was, really interesting. But I don't know, at least at this point, that, they're going to be much more useful than, implementing, right, from a remediation standpoint, implementing some of the basics in terms of security best practices, with respect to compliance controls and things of that nature that are, specific for your organization's footprint. Right. So, I mean, to break that down, I think that as the way that we secure systems change, the way that hackers innovate and come up with intuitive ways to break those systems will change with the environment. So as long as it's going to be, safe, there are going to be safe crackers. And I don't know if Darktrace, can be, fairly articulated as the panacea of, of the end all be all, the cure all for cyber risk. So yeah, I mean, there is some stock to be placed in companies that offer new and compelling capabilities, but I wouldn't hedge my bets just yet. I think that we're still a ways off from a true, paradigm shift of threat detection. Continue to implement, controls and best practices. Continue to educate your cybersecurity teams. Continue to come up with policies and standards that make sense from a data security standpoint. And I think that gets you 80% of the way there. Darktrace and these other, tools should be used as compensatory measures and not necessarily your frontline defense. That's my opinion.
Thank you, Wayne. Let me go to the next question. Ooh, this one, Jeff, I'm not sure if Adrian answered this question, but where do you see the relationship between security and legal? It is ideally a joint partnership with one reporting to the other, vice versa. Would it only be certain teams of security working with legal? For example, the risk team versus maybe the red team?
So when I'm developing compliance programs with entities, and I've done it for small businesses and then businesses that are located internationally, all different types of sectors, whether it's client-facing services or even manufacturing. The key, which I really work hard with the clients, is that everyone really needs to be part of it. And that's one thing that a lot of people don't think about is data privacy and data security is an issue for everyone. It's not just an IT issue. And often just putting that responsibility only on the IT professionals is just not reasonable, especially that now for best practices and for legal requirements, you need to be proactive. And so having the different stakeholders involved from the beginning, and that's including department heads, particularly those departments that process a lot of data or where there are a lot of remote workers, where there could be additional security concerns, having everybody involved in understanding what risk management requirements you have, security requirements you have, and then what related data privacy requirements you have is really important. So every department level, also your executives, and even down the employees. And that's not just, just fish testing and things for emails and understanding some basics, but also really being involved in identifying risk, identifying potential data incidents, and understanding what to do, understanding who's going to be responsible for what. So it really should be bringing everyone to the table, and then having those that are decision makers involved in developing, implementing, and maintaining a really strong security and privacy management program.
Thank you. So we do have another question, and I wanted to get all panelists to provide one tip. The question was, what are some tips that you have for college students who are interested in a path to cyber? So we all know we have the catch-22. If you can't get into cyber, or you can't get into the job without having experience, you can't get experience without getting the job. So what are some ways that students can enter into a cybersecurity career?
So I'd like to speak on this because this is something I'm pretty passionate about. And this is Wayne. I've always had an interest, not even interest, a passion around cybersecurity, but I didn't feel like I had the right background. I was someone that was majoring in a soft social study. I didn't have a whole lot of development experience. And everything, even to date, most of, if not all of my training has been self-taught. So I focused on developing a capability, by enabling myself with certifications. And I think that's a very popular route right now, particularly today where certifications are so, widespread. You can get them online, you can there's training on YouTube, but like, when I was coming up, there wasn't a whole lot of, resources available. So I had to use whatever I could. I think the second piece of that is connections. I've known Renzo for coming up on about 7 or 8 years now. And without Renzo as like a bit of a mentor, but someone else working in the space as a leader at the time, I wouldn't have had a whole lot of the insights that helped frame my decisions and opinions, et cetera, to date. So again, like at a high level, certifications, getting a mentor, and I think finally just being open to try and do new things, or try and do what the next guy or gal isn't really willing to do, right? So a lot of volunteer experience, a lot of trial and error with setting up my own environments, a lot of taking risks in general, things that I think we can do a lot more comfortably today that we couldn't do 10 years ago. And I think with an effective cocktail of those three things, it shouldn't be terribly difficult in this economy, to land at least an entry level role within cybersecurity, because I think the landscape's changing. We used to require a degree, and deep amounts of technical experience. I think James made a comment that I definitely agree with. A lot of the best cyber folks are IT folks, first. So developing an understanding and a capability within IT, and then parlaying that into cybersecurity was probably the preferred method. Now we don't, folks don't really care, right? There are cybersecurity degree programs, which I don't 100% agree with. There are caveats. There are training programs. There are entire groups dedicated to enabling folks to develop a capability in just specifically cybersecurity. People, jobs, they need cybersecurity practitioners. So there is a path for you, if you're willing to do not only what's required, but things that might not seem immediately obvious. I don't think there's a real right path. I think there's your path and there's someone else's path, but everyone's path is different. I'm sure that my path doesn't model anyone on this panel. So yeah, happy to address any direct questions with respect to that.
Yeah. Go ahead, Izzy.
I was just going to say the one thing that Wayne said that I agree with 100% was that one path does not fit all. I know someone asked about what's the best cert to get for cybersecurity practitioners. I don't like questions like that, simply because cybersecurity is so vast that you can be technical and do cybersecurity, and you can be non-technical and do cybersecurity. It's not a catch-all or a one-size-fits-all field. I mean, just based on the panel we have here, we have at least 3 people who didn't even start with a technical background, who are now in cybersecurity. And I'm fortunate enough to have had the experience to where I have worked with legal, I have worked with SOC, I've built a security program, and I've done all that because I put myself in the positions to, number one, find the people who had the right connections in the room, and I made those people my connections. I've also been a sponge where the first 3 years of me being in this field, I literally spoke a lot less than what I do now. I absorbed so much information, so much knowledge. I actually paid attention to what these the folks who were ahead of me, who were 20, 30 years into their career, who were doing cybersecurity before it even had a name. So those are the people that I looked up to in terms of really kind of understanding what it is to be a cyber practitioner. They kind of guided me, and I made myself available to be able to learn that. And I think a lot of the folks coming up now, a lot of the younger generation, or even some of the older ones transitioning careers, you have to be willing to learn more than you speak, at least for the first few months to a few years, perhaps, depending on your path. You have to be able to be flexible, because you probably will want to start in one area and realize that this is just not your bag. Like, I like to use this example a lot. Everybody wants to be a hacker, but not everybody has hacking capabilities in terms of your skill sets. Maybe you just don't have the critical thinking levels that you may need in order to be a hacker. Sometimes you just get burned out because hacking requires a repetitive set of, I guess, what's the term I'm looking for? You have to be diligent when you're trying to be a hacker. And a lot of people just don't want to do that. I know I didn't have the bandwidth for that. So I'm saying all this to say that learn what it is that you like, figure out what sounds good, do your research, find the people in the room who actually have the experience that you're interested in, get to know those people, and then figure out if that direction makes sense for you. And it's okay if it doesn't. You can always go back and rinse and repeat.
Yeah, I wanna piggyback onto that, because I think Jeff asked a question around how do we make cybersecurity appealing, which I think, dovetails into the previous question pretty nicely. I agree with Izzy completely that, cybersecurity hacking, specifically requires a level of dedication and continuous, curiosity that I don't see super prevalent today, particularly amongst millennials and whatever they're calling the new kids these days, generation wires. I don't know. But I don't see that. I see a lot of ADD folks that want to make a quick buck, folks that are focused completely on the salary. I like to take the inspiration approach, right? So like when I was in high school, I went to a school that offered a magnet program within engineering sciences and technology. Because I was Black and I grew up in, less than ideal conditions, we weren't super poor, but we didn't have a whole lot of money. I didn't even know what engineering sciences and technologies meant. All I knew is that my mom told me that I'm going to be a lawyer when I grow up, and that I didn't really have a choice. But I remember, sitting next to a guy, in high school where he, I don't know, some of the folks on the panel might remember like, playing computer games, and you basically had to, go through a proxy in order to actually play the games because the school would block the network. We all knew that, right? We all could kind of figure that out to play online games. This guy, no older than 16, 17 years old, completely took control of the entire LAN network in order, for whatever his purposes were. And that stuff inspired me. A lot of that, really deviant behavior inspired me. And then, the whole MySpace analogies around us, manipulating the HTML code and the JavaScript, et cetera, to play music, et cetera. Like we didn't even recognize that we were developing a pretty useful skill set. Now, to be clear, 10 years ago, that type of skill set and, what we're doing today, it just won't fly, right? The landscape has changed completely. The types of code that we're using is completely different. I myself, I used to be extremely technical. I'm very much divorced from the technical today, right? But I think, to address your question, Jeff, having that inspiration, whatever it may be, within your school program, offering them to teach you how to code, have it mean something, have a goal, right? I think attending hackathons or, trying to be the best hacker you can be, I think that those are really inspiring, conduits in order for you to focus your interests. I think there's nothing wrong with it being money, at least initially, but understand that money is only going to take you so far. You need to develop a skill set.
So I just want to add to that because I know that there's probably a lot of people here that are trying to transition or, looking, for a direct path. And as like everyone already mentioned, there is no direct path. No two paths will be the same. You have to remember that a lot of this takes a lot of research. So you have to really learn how to use Google. Like Google and YouTube, I like to call them Google University and YouTube University. Those are two places where you can basically learn anything. And I take the approach that, if someone mentions something to me, I'll go and look it up and find some information. And then if I'm not sure, I'll come back and ask for clarity. So do some research. If you're not sure and you have a question about something, do a little bit of research first. And then, find some people that you can ask the question to. A lot of us are very open to answering questions that you have. So, but one thing you have to learn how to do is, do some research for yourself, because what you see, me doing versus what you see Izzy doing versus what you see Wayne doing or Renzo or any of the panelists doing, we all do different stuff, and we all take the time to learn what it is that we're learning. It will not be overnight. It will never be overnight. So don't rush. You have time. and you want to perfect what it is that you're learning. And, you know, always ask those questions. And how you get there is you step outside of yourself. You know, it may be uncomfortable for 5 minutes to go and talk to, you know, that manager about something that you've seen that sparked your curiosity. You know, be willing to go and talk to them and say, hey, I noticed this. You know, do you have any more information? And then just take the initiative to research it on your own, deeply learn about it. And if you realize that, hey, you know, this isn't something that I want to do, or I don't like this area of cybersecurity, because there's a lot of areas of it, you can go back and say, all right, well, let me explore, you know, path B now. It's never that you have to pigeonhole yourself into one area. So always remember that. Always keep learning. Always step outside your comfort zone, and make sure you network with other people.
Yep. Networking is definitely critical. Thank you all for sharing. We have one last question. Some of you have answered some of this in the chat. Definitely appreciate the touch on mentorship. Renzo and Wayne are definitely the epitome of that. And I appreciate both of you talking about that. So in addition to mentorship, networking, and connections, what is one actionable step? And this is just for each of you. What is one actionable step that someone can take to start their cyber career? We have researching, networking, mentoring, connections. What else?
Hey, Tanika. Just to add, so a lot of times I get questions about, hey, I only have 2 years of experience, or I don't see no, intro jobs for cyber. So my recommendation is be bold, right? So a lot of times these companies, they're looking for not only your technical piece, but also, are you willing to work in a team, right? Are you willing to learn? Are you willing to be a sponge, right? I have some people that only had 3 years of, IT or cyber and got a senior role, right? So it's a matter how, you conduct yourself in a team setting. So I would say be bold, step out your comfort zone. And also I put in the chat about having a mentor, right? Select 1 or 2 people and like pick their brain of how they got to where they at, right? Because for me, I'm very competitive. So I'm like, if my mentor can get there, I know I can get there and beyond. So that gives me motivation. And I know I have like 30 mentors, and actually some of them are tuning in right now. So I would say, pick that one person that, that you want to emulate, right? And just, ask them questions and see how they got to where they are. And I think that's, that would be a tremendous help as folks start going into cyber.
Yeah, and I would like to piggyback that too, and saying, even if they're, make sure you have discussions with multiple people doing different types of jobs, right? And you will be surprised how many people will have a 5-minute conversation with you about what they're doing, right? I've stalked people on LinkedIn trying to see who I know through who, if we went to the same school, if somehow we crossed paths, or I know based on their position. And you'll be very surprised, even very senior level people that don't even know you in this field, and especially if they come from a diverse background, are very, very willing to take that 5 minutes and talk with you. And the more people you speak with and find out what they're doing, what worked for them, what didn't work for them, it'll allow you to find your own path and what's going to work best for you.
I'll just add one quick thing. My actionable item is commit yourself to becoming a lifelong student if you really want to be in cyber, because the learning never stops. It doesn't matter what level you're at, there's always something to learn, because the industry is evolving very rapidly. Every day there's a new technology, a new different type of exploit, a new different regulation. So it doesn't really matter what part of the industry you want to be in, just commit yourself to want to learn and continue learning.
I'll say one thing that you have to be comfortable with is saying, I don't know. I don't know is okay versus flat out lying and saying you do know. But the approach of I don't know is that you're willing to take the steps to learn more about what it is that you don't know. So be willing to say I don't know, but hey, I'm going to go, research or do something to find out more information, and then we can discuss it. So it's okay that you don't know. Have that as a part of, your learning processes, because you're not going to know everything. We all don't know everything about cyber. Trust me when I say we all don't know everything, but we're also all willing to learn and say, hey, I don't know. But I will get back to you once I find out some information for you. So that's very valuable and something that you can start to include in your development of your cyber skills as well.
I'm going to take the contrarian point of view and kind of give something that's hopefully a little shocking but eye-opening. I'm going to say spend less time learning and more time doing. You will gain a whole lot of, you'll learn a whole lot of experience actually applying what you're reading. So I now force myself to spend 50% of whatever time I spend reading or learning something new that same day, applying it like that evening. I can tell you that people that when I interview them, if someone starts spouting off really cool technical knowledge, I'm like, okay, pretty cool. But the person that spits off, say 50% technical knowledge, and then goes off and talks about how basically annoying it is to do this in the command line, because it's such a long command and you spend so much time just like mistyping things. I'll hire the second person in 2 seconds, because that person's actually gone and done it. And I've been using that same approach, like to gain credibility with my clients. People use it to gain credibility with me. It's those little things that help you find the people that have been doing it and actually been doing it as opposed to reading it. So, whatever time you spend reading, spend at least 50% of that time actually applying it somewhere.
Yes, James, I guess I'll finally speak. So I have 2 main points, which everyone already covered. So you notice there's a consistent theme from everyone on this panel. So number 1, it's to commit. Literally, when I'm getting off this call, I'm going to go study how to write public law or public security policy. I'm going to read multiple books. It's nonstop. If you're in it, you're in it. Number 2, it's again finding a good mentor. I'm sitting here listening. I found it funny that I had the same 4 mentors over the past 5 years. And guess what they do? They're all CISOs for their own federal agency. So either that's a coincidence or I kind of subconsciously knew what I wanted to do, but you pick the mentors that help you get to where you want to go. They're going to help you. They're going to yell at you. They're going to call you some funny names at times, but it's all out of a love and respect because they see something in you that they want to spend their time mentoring you. So mentorship is a 2-way street. Remember that. So make sure you pick a mentor that wants to mentor you, not just because you want to be them. But 1 and 2, commitment. You're in it if you're in it, and 2, find a mentor for where you want to go.
I'll add to that. I think one that is somewhat underappreciated is just being open-minded, just in general, and finally, humble yourself. I think in technology in general, to the second point, a lot of folks come in, with this "I can do it all" mentality. I'm the best of the best. And while it's good to have that capability, it's good to have that, I'm not capable, but that understanding, that competence. I'm not even going to talk about how it rubs other people the wrong way. You're limiting yourself, right? You're not exposing yourself to other areas where you may be deficient in because you think you already know. The same principle of you can't teach an old dog new tricks. So I think that's part of it. I don't think that that's really talked about as much. Technology is a very discrete science. So folks, you think that you either know or you don't. And sometimes it becomes clear that you either know or you don't. And individuals will try and use that against you. And so I think that there comes this culture that develops around, absolutely being the best of the best because you think but sometimes you really don't know anything. So yeah, that's just my 2 cents. And to the first point, keep an open mind. I quite literally mean to anything. I learned quite a bit from my more junior folks because I acknowledge that I don't always know everything. And I also understand this ecosystem, this landscape is always changing. We don't use Metasploit anymore. So just something to kind of keep in mind.
I'll just say you have to be a hustler. And what I mean by that is you have to be comfortable hearing no, because you will hear a lot of no's. It doesn't matter how many years of experience you have in this field, somebody will tell you no. And multiple people will tell you no at the same time. So if this is something that you want, you have to be comfortable with being uncomfortable. You have to be comfortable with creating your own opportunities, because although, someone said that it's not hard to get into this field, I disagree, because it's, in my opinion, it is kind of difficult to get into cybersecurity. And some of you are probably experiencing some of that difficultness, I guess. And you have to be willing to keep going until somebody tells you yes. And that requires a level of tenacity that a lot of other fields probably don't experience. And so if that's really the best thing that I could tell you, you're going to get your feelings hurt, because I know I had one year, I already had experience. I probably put in like 100 to 150 applications. That was 150 no's before somebody told me yes. So just be ready for it. It's not an easy field. It's not for the faint of heart. So if this is what you want, be prepared.
I think that's it. Well, thank you all. This is a lot of, I know I'm saving the chat because y'all gave all the hashtag Twitter, everything that you need to know, you would see everywhere. It would be all over Twitter, all over GroupMe, Facebook. All these tips are really amazing, and thank you all for sharing your experience. I see a lot of people have gotten a lot of insight from this panel. We definitely had, the panel was consisted mostly of beginners and people who are trying to apply their skills daily from the polling results. So thank you for attending, sharing your experience, your background. And I really appreciate you just taking this time out on a Saturday to do this. And I'm going to conclude this panel, Michaela. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Yeah.